Today's class looks at cases, statutes, and secondary sources. And I want to begin with the idea of starting with a secondary source. There are two ways to do it, and the first way to do it is to pull up a case or a statute and then key cite it to find a useful secondary source. Here's an example. By way of quick review, from the Westlaw homepage, you can type in a case's name or citation and then click on it to pull up the name of the case. When you're there, remember that the Citing References dropdown gives you both secondary sources and practical law, and I am going to really emphasize the importance of practical law. This is written by alumni of the world's biggest and most prestigious law firms, corporate law departments, and government agencies. Here's what I like about practical law. First, it connects you to relevant cases or statutes, so other pieces of primary law. It explains the rule in very plain and straightforward language. And then it also tells you the next thing you need to think about in the course of that legal analysis. So maybe you get to reasonableness only after you look at some of these other things. And then once you decide that it's reasonable, then you take a look at the remedies. These are things that other secondary sources do, but practical law really does them at an awesomely high level. As you can see here, once again, explanations of the primary law in straightforward language, links to cases and statutes like Jindrak that we just looked at, and then the next thing to think about, Indeed, if you scroll down to the bottom of anything on practical law, you'll see model documents, forms, and checklists that you'll totally be using in your second and third years to actually do the thing that you are researching in your first year. How else can you get to practical law? Check it out in the upper left-hand corner. You've got that drop down and you're selecting practical law. And you could also derp some words into the box up there and then click on search and totally pull it up this way as well. Way number 3 to get into practical law. Again, number 1, key cite. Number 2, run that search in the upper left-hand corner. But way number 3 is to pull it up from a statute. And then once you're there, again, process works the same way. Look under Citing References in Practical Law, and you'll see that same resource that we were looking at. Back to Jindrak, because this is going to be a bit of a transition point. From those citing references, remember, those 65 secondary sources are also clickable. And at this point, I want to introduce the idea of running a search to find secondary sources. The other way we can do this is by starting with a secondary source to find primary law from it. We already did this with practical law. Remember how we picked it in the upper left-hand corner and tried some searches over there? Now I'm going to show you a treatise. It's called Williston on Contracts. And it does just the same things that practical law does because it also explains to you the rule. If you mouse over that footnote, it gives you links to the cases and statutes. And you can see from this left-hand side, that's the table of contents. Browsing it like a book tells you the next thing and the next thing and the next thing that you need to think about. Noticing as well that in that list there is a citation to Jindrak as well as other cases from other jurisdictions. How do we get to this? Start from the home page, type in Williston, click on Williston. So now that we're here at the Williston source, you'll notice how it's over here, and it also shows up over here. So any search that we do is searching only this source, and we're not drinking from the fire hose. Notice as well that Williston is part of a whole body of commercial law texts and treatises, so if you don't see anything hot over here, you can go and use these breadcrumbs to go to another more broader source and run that same search over there. You can also browse it by clicking on any of these topics over here or use an index, but what I've done is just simply type in a search term and then hit enter or that search button over here. Noticing that we've got some really great results here, and that shortly in this list is that same section that we looked at. How do I know it's the same section? Check out those eyeglasses along the side and the fact that it shows up as different colors. So this is something I've definitely seen before. So we've used a secondary source to tell us what we should expect to see in the cases and statutes and actually connect us to those cases and statutes. So what do we do with them once we have them? A couple different things. So here we're looking at the Jindrak case once more, and recall that the West editors write a synopsis and headnotes that tell you what to expect as far as what is going on in this case. They also summarize in the headnotes at least 19 discrete points of law, IRAC-sized bytes that are given throughout the whole case. Remember in our initial training that I asked you to hit change view so that way you see it on 2 columns. So if you don't see it on 2 columns on yours, make sure that you do that so that you can see everything you see in these 2 columns here. Why? Because if you scroll down to get to headnote number 15, you can see that these headnotes are classified in an outline along the right-hand side, a key number system that is exclusive to Westlaw and that operates like hashtags for cases. By starting at a really general level, all the contracts cases, or at a really specific one, what kinds of restrictions are necessary for protection, you can update your research on those particular points of law simply by clicking on them. And you can even change the jurisdiction to find cases in Ohio. What does that look like? I clicked on the most specific one over here, restriction necessary for protection. If we don't really care about Iowa, that's cool. If your headnote is in the key numbers, you can hit change, you can switch it over into Ohio and update your research over there. And here's the beauty of using those key numbers. Remember how we used the headnote to understand what was going on in the Shory's case during our initial training? We used the key numbers to pull in similar cases like this Elder case. And you can see that the Elder case is way more recent than the 80s decision of Jindrak. But what it tells us is that it tells us here's how it wound out. And here were some of the factors that the court looked at. This was important. This was important. This was important. And all of those things help us realize that this is a current case. It is a good case because we don't see any flag treatment of it. And it also is responsive to our issue. Wow, that is really awesome. Keeping in mind as well that it also connects you to really, really old cases that the editors at West have been putting on the shelf since the early 1800s. You can see here Brecker is the first one in this key number on that issue. And you'll also notice that Brecker has a red flag. You may see some colored flags. I want to talk about that right now. If you click on it with me, you'll see what I'm talking about. Anytime you have negative citing treatment, so anytime you see flags like this one over here, you can click on it or on that tab to be taken to the KeyCite screen. If you're wondering what all the words are in KeyCite, you can click on that logo for a bit more description. But basically what you can see here is that Brecker has been cited negatively by 5 other cases. And we'll tell you what those 5 are, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And specifically, the most negative one here, Ehlers, overrules Brecker in some ways. Which ways? What I've done is I've moused over these headnotes. And again, the brilliance of the headnotes and key numbers tells us what that overruling court found so not great about this Brecker case. Once again, the very basics for memo research. Definitely click on that flag when you see it and figure out what is bad. All of it might not be bad, only some of it. So make sure you know what was overruled in those later cases. Once again, though, if you are looking at a statute, so again, this statute was something that we got from the practical law practice note. I want to talk a little bit about how to find useful cases from a statute, right? Because we started with cases and we used the key numbers to find other useful cases. I want to talk about the notes of decisions. You can see them in that tab over here or along this left-hand side. The notes of decisions operate like a playbook for statutes because the West editors are adding those cases that interpret the statute to the playbook. I've clicked on the notes of decisions tab in the drop-down over here. And what I also would like to do is click on this button over here that says hierarchical view. The reason that I did that is so that now I can click on specific topics like retirement and see all of the cases that the West editors have classified with that particular point of law. Are you telling me that you can have a non-compete as a lawyer? Yes, if you have a retirement plan. And what is a retirement plan? Well, it's this thing over here, and this is what it looked like in the actual Brown-Winnick case, and you can click on that to read it. The whole point of doing that is, again, so that way it connects you to useful cases on your issue. And you'll see that this one, because it's a very specific context outside of your usual non-compete, it's specific to attorney-client non-competes, it's got a different key number that you would use to research that specialized issue. Finally, a little bit about workflow tools so that way you can avoid researching for things. Here we are back on Jindrak, and I want to emphasize a couple of things. If you left click and drag to highlight some text like I'm doing right here, in the dropdown, you're going to see a number of options like save to folder, add notes, copy with reference. I'll leave it up to you to figure out what happens when you click that dropdown and select Ohio. But you will want to find the magic language of the case, add those notes, and then click save over here for reasons that will become apparent in just a second. Specifically, that you can create a new folder to pull in all of your relevant research. If you call it non-compete and give it the name of your jurisdiction and save it, you will be able to pull up some really great stuff. Oh, by the way, if you click on enough related content on Westlaw, just like watching 10 videos of cats, we are going to suggest more videos of cats, right? You can see here, these are other examples of secondary sources that you totally didn't click on, and we'll also suggest key numbers, cases, and statutes you didn't click on. I already clicked on the key number for non-compete, so they may suggest this one over here because it's something that I haven't clicked on yet. Anyway, what I was going to say is that under the folder menu over here, by the way, check out where that recommendation will be. It'll light up over there along the side. But if you're in that folder menu and you open up your Iowa folder or your whatever jurisdiction you happen to be in, you can click this button over here along the side to pull up a research report. That research report tells you the cases. It gives you the magic language that you highlighted. It gives you the note that you made, and you can also edit that within the text of your research report. Only in Westlaw, the ability to also download that ready-made outline so that it becomes super easy for you to draft your motion, memo, or brief, and even to take that up to the podium to argue when that time comes. So once again, start with a secondary source. Key cite the primary law, or start with a secondary source to connect you to primary law. Once you're at a case, use those key numbers. If you're at a statute, use those notes of decisions, also called annotations from the paper statute. Finally, as you have questions, look me up from the lawschool.tr.com site and send me a note. Or use the live chat link at the bottom of Westlaw, call the reference attorneys, or drop a line by email. Thanks for watching and happy researching.